Petting a wild animal is a calculated act of self-destruction that your brain celebrates as a victory. Imagine you are standing in a clearing, and a 1,000-pound grizzly bear cub wanders toward you. Logically, every survival instinct you possess should be screaming for you to retreat. Your ancestors survived because they feared the claw and the tooth. Yet, as that small, fuzzy, rounded creature tumbles over its own paws, something inside you breaks. Your heart rate doesn't spike with fear. It softens with a strange, magnetic longing. You feel an almost agonizing physical pull to reach out and bury your fingers in that thick, dangerous fur. You aren't thinking about the mother bear lurking in the brush or the infectious bacteria living in the coat. You are thinking about how soft it looks. This is a profound biological paradox. We are the only apex predators on Earth that regularly risk our lives just to feel a specific texture. We have been known to approach bison, sharks, and even mountain lions because our brains decided that the tactile reward was worth the potential for a gruesome end. It seems like a glitch in our programming, a catastrophic error in judgment that should have been pruned out by natural selection thousands of years ago, but it wasn't. In fact, this urge has only grown stronger as we've moved further away from the natural world. The problem is that you think you are in control. You probably believe you pet animals because they are cute, or because it makes you feel calm, or because you simply like dogs. That is the comforting lie your conscious mind tells you to explain a behavior that is actually being dictated by deep, prehistoric layers of your nervous system. Most people assume cuteness is a subjective opinion, like a preference for a certain color or a style of music. We think we see a kitten, decide it is adorable, and then choose to interact with it. But the reality is far more clinical and far less optional. Cuteness is not a feeling. It is a biological trigger that bypasses your logic entirely. In the mid-20th century, an ethologist named Konrad Lorenz identified a set of physical features that he called Kinderschema, or the baby schema. These features include a large head relative to the body, a high forehead, big eyes set low on the face, and soft, rounded body shapes. When your eyes perceive these specific geometric ratios, they send a signal directly to your orbit of frontal cortex. This is the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and expectation. It lights up instantly, long before your conscious mind has even identified what species of animal you're looking at. Lorenz argued that this response evolved specifically to ensure that human parents wouldn't abandon their incredibly vulnerable, high-maintenance infants. Our babies are born unfinished and helpless, so evolution had to install a must-protect hardware hack in our brains. The glitch is that this hack is incredibly easy to trigger. It doesn't have a species filter. If a baby seal, a puppy, or even a cartoon character hits those Kinderschema ratios, your brain registers it as a human infant in need of care. You aren't petting a dog because you like its personality. You are petting it because your brain thinks it's an infant and is forcing you to provide tactile nurturing to ensure its survival. The skin is a professional liar. Once that visual trigger fires, your hands begin to move, and this is where the second layer of the trap closes. We tend to think of our skin as a simple protective barrier that tells us if something is hot, cold, or sharp. But your skin is actually a sophisticated social organ. Deep within your dermis is a very specific type of nerve fiber known as C-tactile afferents, or CTAs. These fibers are distinct from the nerves that tell you about pain or pressure. CTAs have one job and one job only. They respond to a very specific type of gentle, stroking touch. Research conducted at the University of Gothenburg has shown that these fibers are most active when something moves across the skin at a speed of between 1 and 10 centimeters per second. This is exactly the speed of a human caress, and it is also the exact speed of a hand petting an animal. When you stroke a dog's fur, these fibers send a slow, steady signal directly to the posterior insular cortex. This isn't the part of the brain that maps where you are being touched. It's the part that processes emotion and social bonding. In simple terms, your skin is hardwired to translate the texture of fur into a feeling of profound safety and belonging. You aren't just feeling hair, you are receiving a biological all-clear signal. This is why we don't feel the same urge to pet a smooth rock or a piece of plastic. Those materials don't stimulate the CTAs in the same way. Fur, with its warmth and its specific resistance, is the perfect key for the CTA lock. It is a sensory exploit that makes your body believe it is in a state of deep social intimacy, even if the partner in that intimacy is a creature that doesn't know your name. This is a chemical hijacking. As your hand continues to move, the third layer of the petting trap begins to flood your system. This is the endocrine response, and it is perhaps the most powerful part of the entire experience. You've likely heard of oxytocin, often called the love hormone or the bonding molecule. It's the chemical responsible for the bond between a mother and her child, and between romantic partners. For a long time, scientists believed oxytocin was strictly an intraspecies chemical, meaning it only worked between humans. But a landmark 2015 study by Takefumi Nagasawa and his colleagues at Azabu University in Japan completely upended that idea. They brought dogs and their owners into a lab and measured their oxytocin levels before and after a 30-minute interaction. They found that when humans pet their dogs and, crucially, made eye contact with them, oxytocin levels in the humans spiked by over 300%. But here is the wow fact that changes everything. The dog's oxytocin levels spiked by 130% as well. This is what researchers now call the oxytocin-mediated positive feedback loop. By petting the animal, you aren't just giving yourself a chemical hit, you are actively altering the brain chemistry of another species to make it love you back. We have created a cross-species neurochemical bridge. When you pet a dog, you are participating in an ancient biological contract where both parties trade touch for a sense of chemical euphoria. This isn't just a nice interaction. It is a pharmaceutical event. Your brain is essentially manufacturing its own drugs to reward you for touching a creature that, in any other context, would be a competitor for resources. The reward system is prone to violence. Sometimes, the urge to pet something becomes so intense that it actually turns into a form of aggression. Have you ever seen a creature so cute that you felt like you wanted to squeeze it until it popped? Have you ever grit your teeth and said, "I could just eat you up," while looking at a puppy? This is a documented psychological phenomenon called cute aggression. It sounds like a mental health red flag, but it's actually a sign of a healthy, functioning brain. In 2018, Catherine Stavropoulos, a researcher at the University of California, Riverside, used electroencephalography (EEG) to study the brains of people experiencing this phenomenon. She found that when we see something overwhelmingly cute, our brain's reward system, the part that processes dopamine, becomes so overstimulated that it threatens to crash the system. To prevent you from becoming incapacitated by how much you love a kitten, your brain triggers a compensatory aggressive response. It's a leveling mechanism. The brain throws in a dash of aggression to dial back the overwhelming positive emotion so you can actually function. And remember to feed the animal instead of just staring at it until you both starve. This means that the more you want to squeeze an animal, the more your brain is actually struggling to cope with the sheer volume of nurture signals it's receiving. We are literally built to be overwhelmed by the softness of others. We have spent millennia engineering this obsession. To understand why this urge is so universal, we have to look back at how we got here. The animals we pet today are not the animals our ancestors met. We have spent the last 15,000 years engaging in a massive, unintentional experiment in genetic engineering. This is best illustrated by the Belyaev-Fox experiment, which began in 1959 in the Soviet Union. Scientist Dmitry Belyaev wanted to understand how dogs became domesticated. He took wild silver foxes and selected them for only one trait: tameness. He didn't select for color, size, or fur quality, just the lack of aggression toward humans. Within just a few generations, something incredible happened. The foxes didn't just become nicer, they started to look different. Their ears became floppy, their tails started to wag, their coats developed spots. Most importantly, their faces became shorter and more rounded. This is known as domestication syndrome. It turns out that the genes for tameness are linked to the neural crest cells, which also determine the physical structure of the face and ears. By choosing to interact with the nicest animals, our ancestors were accidentally selecting for the Kinderschema features that trigger our must-pet response. We didn't just find cute animals, we bred the danger out of them, and replaced it with features that exploit our own biological weaknesses. We sculpted the animal kingdom into a collection of living stress relief toys. The silence is the most dangerous part. The myth we tell ourselves is that petting is a luxury, a hobby for people with spare time. But the reality is that for a human being, touch is as much of a biological requirement as vitamin D or sleep. There is a condition known as touch starvation, and in the modern digital-heavy world, it is becoming a silent epidemic. When you are deprived of tactile stimulation, your cortisol levels, the primary stress hormone, remain chronically elevated. Your heart rate stays higher. Your immune system even begins to underperform. Tiffany Field of the Touch Research Institute has documented that human touch is the fastest way to downregulate the nervous system. But in a society where human-to-human touch is often complicated or restricted, animals have become our primary biological regulators. When you pet an animal, you are performing a form of external nervous system maintenance. You are using another living creature's body to lower your own blood pressure and stabilize your heart rate. A study from Washington State University found that just 10 minutes of petting a dog or cat resulted in a significant reduction in salivary cortisol. We don't just want to pet things, we are using them as a prosthetic for our own emotional stability. We are a species that has forgotten how to be calm on its own, so we reach for the nearest warm, fuzzy object to do the work for us. You are being used as a biological battery. But here is the most unsettling part of this entire arrangement. We think of ourselves as the masters of the house, the ones who chose to bring these animals into our lives for our own enjoyment. But when you look at the big reveal of our evolutionary history, the roles might actually be reversed. Consider the domestic cat. Cats are one of the only animals that self-domesticated. They weren't herded or hunted into our homes. They simply moved in because our grain stores attracted mice. Over time, cats developed a specific vocalization, a solicitation purr, that researchers at the University of Sussex found contains a high-frequency component that mimics the frequency of a human infant's cry. When a cat purrs to be fed or petted, it is literally using an acoustic hack to trigger the same nurture response as a starving baby. They have evolved to occupy a specific protected niche in our lives by exploiting our most basic parental instincts. And it works. We provide them with food, shelter, and medical care. And in exchange, they allow us to touch them for a few minutes a day to lower our cortisol. From a biological perspective, who is the real winner? We have essentially been domesticated by our pets. They have trained us to respond to their visual and auditory cues with a reward of food and attention. Every time you feel that irresistible urge to reach out and pet a sleeping cat, you aren't expressing your free will. You are responding to a sophisticated multisensory manipulation that has been perfected over thousands of years. The animal isn't the only one being tamed. Think back to that grizzly bear cub from the beginning. The reason you wanted to touch it wasn't because you were being brave or because you were being foolish. It was because your brain is a prisoner of its own programming. You are walking around with a nervous system that is constantly scanning the environment for Kinderschema, for C-tactile afferent stimulation, and for oxytocin loops. You are a touch-seeking machine that has been dropped into a world where that touch is increasingly rare. Our need to pet everything isn't a quirk. It is the scream of a lonely social primate trying to find a way to regulate its own fear. We reach for the fur because in that moment, the chemical reward is more important than the physical risk. We would rather be bitten while touching something soft than live in a world where we don't touch anything at all. We have built our entire civilization on the idea that we are the ones in charge, that we are the rational actors who decided to tame the wild. But every time you see a dog in a park and your hand starts to twitch before you even realize you've seen it, you are reminded of the truth. You are not the master of your impulses. You are the subject of a very old, very soft regime. But why does this need for contact feel so much like a hunger? If petting were just a pleasant bonus, we wouldn't feel that strange hollow ache when we go too long without it. The answer lies in something called social baseline theory, proposed by Dr. James Cohen. His research suggests that the human brain evolved to expect the presence of others as its baseline state. Being alone for a human is actually a high-effort, energy-intensive metabolic state. When you are alone, your brain has to work harder to monitor for threats and manage its own emotions. But when you are in physical contact with another living being, whether it's a human partner or a golden retriever, your brain registers that it can outsource some of that work. It essentially gets a metabolic discount. Touch tells your brain that you are safe, that you are part of a pack, and that you can afford to turn off the high-alert sensors. This is why petting an animal feels like recharging. It literally is. You are lowering the energy cost of being alive by using the presence of another creature to bolster your own defenses. We don't just pet things because they are cute. We pet them because we are tired of being the only person in our own heads. We pet them to prove that we aren't alone in the dark. The history of our species is written in the grease and dander of 1,000 different coats. We have petted our way across continents, using horses to carry us, dogs to protect us, and cats to keep our stores clean. But through all that history, the one constant has been the hand on the fur. It is the most basic form of communication we have, a language that predates words and even predates our own species. It is a silent, tactile conversation that says, I am here, and you are here, and for right now, neither of us has to be afraid. We have survived as a species not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we were the most willing to bridge the gap between ourselves and the other. We reached out into the tall grass, and instead of a spear, we held out a hand. And in that moment, we changed the world forever. But as you look at your own hand resting on the head of a dog or the back of a cat, you have to wonder where the taming truly ends. We like to think of ourselves as the architects of the domestic world, the ones who brought the animals in from the cold. But the more we learn about the way touch rewires our brains, the more it seems that we were the ones who were lost. We were the ones who needed the comfort of the other to keep our own hearts from racing out of control. We didn't bring them into our homes because they were useful. We brought them in because we couldn't handle the silence of our own skin. We are the architects of a world where we are never truly alone, yet we are constantly searching for one more thing to touch. We are the apex predators who would risk everything for a moment of softness. Does that make us the masters of the earth, or its most successful captives? We spend our lives surrounded by creatures that have learned exactly which buttons to press to make us provide them with everything they need. We have turned our homes into elaborate enclosures where we serve as the primary caregivers for animals that have mastered the art of biological manipulation. And we do it all with a smile, because the chemical hit we get in return is the most addictive substance on the planet. We are the only species that has built its entire society around the need to provide tactile stimulation to other species. We are the only ones who see a predator and think of a pillow. It is a beautiful, dangerous, and deeply strange way to live. We are a collection of ancient instincts dressed up in modern clothes, trying to navigate a world that feels increasingly cold and distant. So we reach for the fur, we reach for the warmth, we reach for the only thing that makes the cortisol stop, and the oxytocin flow. We pet because we have to. We pet because we are empty without it. And we will keep petting until there is nothing left to touch. Because in the end, it's not about the animal at all. It's about the silence that waits for us when we let go. The next time you see a creature with those big round eyes and that soft, inviting coat, remember that you aren't making a choice. You are falling into a trap that was set for you 10,000 years ago. You are about to become a biological battery for a creature that has been waiting for you to arrive. You are about to trade your autonomy for a chemical glow that will fade the moment you pull your hand away, and you will do it gladly. You will do it because you are human, and to be human is to be desperately, hopelessly hungry for the feel of something alive. You will reach out, you will stroke the fur, and for a few seconds the world will make sense. But don't ever think for a second that you are the one in control of that hand. You are always going to pet the dog. You should really ask yourself if you're the one who owns the pet, or if the pet is simply the one who allows you to stay in its house to provide the tactile labor it requires. It's a fascinating question, and if you've enjoyed this deep dive into the neurological traps of our own making, I'd love for you to join us for more of these rabbit holes. Hitting that subscribe button is the best way to make sure you're here for the next one. After all, your brain is already looking for the next hit of curiosity. The hand that pets the predator is the same hand that eventually builds the cage, and the cage is always bigger than you think.